I will give some SEC fans credit. I have seen a little bit of contrition from some being like, all right, like Paul Feinbaum, like, hey, maybe we were a little bit off here. But man, it's crazy to see how different the reactions are from like the SEC and then like a BYU, which gets left out somewhat unfairly, certainly left out of the discussion unfairly, and just being really quiet about it. No one complaining all that much. BYU just kind of accepted it because they haven't been bolstered by a massive propaganda machine and national titles and draft picks and everything that the SEC has had. Totally opposite ends of the spectrum in their reactions to these same scenarios. Now, why do I frame it like that? Why do I bring BYU into this out of nowhere? Because I do want to show you this tweet from Lane Kiffin, who responded to Reddit College Football, and this is about BYU. So here we go. Reddit College Football, are there any reasons not to play this game a week from now? Would be a tremendous game and seems like both teams would be up for the challenge. It's Ole Miss and BYU. Ole Miss did, credit to Lane Kiffin, win their bowl game. They beat Duke. And Lane Kiffin says, spot the ball. Like, let's go. Let's play it. I mean, I would love to watch that game. And we're talking about expanding the playoff to 14, right? That's where it seems very clear that the Big Ten and SEC want to go. Let's play it that way. Let's get Ole Miss and BYU. Let's get them together. Have them be teams 13 and 14. I would love it. I would love it. And at least now it seems like the admission from Lane Kiffin with that is kind of like, all right, fine. Like, if we would be in there, we can bring BYU too. That is, to me, at least a little nod to Lane Kiffin surveying the landscape and being like, you know what? All right, fine. It wouldn't be us in Alabama. I saw Jalen Milroe turning it over left and right in the ReliaQuest Bowl against a 7-5 Michigan team, right? I understand the reality here. So let's do it. Ole Miss and BYU. And I would love it if we had that because you know, and I'm sure there are replies. I didn't really check the replies here. I wonder if we can find a reply like that would just be, Ole Miss by 1 million. Yeah. I don't know. Not seeing one right away. But like the hypotheticals will be flowing from SEC country on that, right? Like, Ole Miss by 1 billion winning that game. But it'd be the same hypothetical game that they always play. And how well has that really worked out for the league now? We've got to go play the games. Did the same thing for Texas and Arizona State. How did that work out? Got to go actually play the games. But kudos to Lane Kiffin. He seems to be very willing to do that. So is this going to just be an outlier year, though? I have seen that level of pushback, too, on this SEC narrative. Like, could this just be an outlier? This is just a one-year blip on the radar, John. They're going to get back to dominating. It'll be fine. Why are we making such a big deal out of this? It's just 1 year. Perhaps. But first of all, I would say it is becoming a bit of a trend now. Last year, Alabama barely gets in. Debatably should not have gotten in, didn't deserve it, but that narrative was more fresh last year. So they get the extra boost. Nick Saban was still the coach. You get a Saban boost. I think you're kidding yourself if you don't think that plays a very large role in what actually happened there. So they get in the playoff. But 2 years in a row, almost missed the Final Four entirely. And there are legitimate reasons why this is happening. Because the portal and NIL make it way harder to stockpile rosters. Like, everybody seems to have caught on to that now. I'm not even going to... We can mention, hey, the SEC seemed a lot better when it was illegal to pay players, and they were the ones just doing it while most were not. I won't even totally go down that road. I'm sure there's some truth to that. But really, I think it's just way more about the transfer portal being wide open with other teams available to give a bunch of money to players. You're just not going to have guys sit around third string playing special teams for 2 years before they get their chance. Like, guys want to play, and it's spreading the talent out around more. So a good stat about the amount of five-star players going to the SEC, even out of high school right now, has stayed about the same, but it's now spread among like 10 teams instead of like 4. So you're just getting a more equal dispersion of talent across the sport. And, teams like Georgia do use the transfer portal. Alabama does use the transfer portal, but it's more detrimental to them to lose their second and third stringers than being able to pluck a high profile guy or two or three. In general, it's going to be harder to maintain like the real edge that you had, which, yes, there was high level talent there, but it was also the sheer depth of high level talent that was always on those SEC rosters. Easier to withstand injuries, the grind of an entire season, right? Like things like that become much easier when you're Georgia or Alabama from 2017 to 2020, right? Like that sort of era of college football. So, yeah, Nick Saban also is gone, by the way. And he was doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the last 15 years and helped that conference stake a lot of its reputation. And he also gave birth to Kirby Smart, right? Who's the other guy that kept on with that. Not saying that Kirby can't do the same, and already kind of has with like Dan Lanning, who's not in the conference anymore. But you get the idea here, right? Like Nick Saban is not coming back. That is the best guy to ever do it. Do not minimize what he is or was, and Alabama's learning that lesson the hard way this year. You can't do that. So there are legitimate reasons to think, yeah, actually this makes sense. It's not like I would look at it and say, well, this just seems kind of fluky. No, it seems like a couple of things have added up here. I also wouldn't say that it's a guarantee that it's going to stay this way forever. The big boys are going to be ruthless, man. Like Georgia won back-to-back national titles, and now it's back-to-back years not in the Final Four. That's not going to sit well with Kirby. That's not going to sit well with boosters who have deep pockets and all this tradition and a lot to offer, obviously, reputationally in the South. They will be ruthless in trying to find ways to tilt the scales back toward them. And I'm not even just talking about getting the 4 auto bids and changing the format and whatever Sankey's going to try and do in 2026. I'm talking about like talent acquisition in this era, finding a way to still make this work better for them when it seems clear now, a couple of years into it, that it's working better for the other sides. It's doing more benefit to parity in college football than it is the upper crust and the elite there. Yeah. By the way, I saw Kirby Smart is about to land the Branch brothers from USC. So they're at work. I mean, they're using the portal, and they're still going to get good players doing it. But for right now, until that does change, we don't even know if it will, but you got to go back to earning it. And that really maybe is just the overall message here. You got to earn it. The SEC has to earn it. And for a while, they've I can't say coasted, but they have benefited greatly from reputation. And the reputation cannot be doing the heavy lifting now. It's got to be actually earned out there on the field. So if you've got a league that's just beating each other up and a bunch of 2 and 3 loss teams, like, yeah, I'm sorry, you're not going to get this overwhelming amount of like 5-6 teams into the playoff like people would have thought going into the year. And I can remember those discussions happening, and I said, yeah, I mean, probably, yeah, the SEC is going to be in the conversation to get like 5 or 6 teams in. Now we know this era seems to be pushing that further away. So until proven otherwise, you got to earn it. You got to earn it like everybody else, SEC. That is where I'm at on that.